My name is Andrew Bathory, and I am a co-founder of Elmnt Studio here in Montreal. And Elmnt is a co-creation that sort of came out of being a yoga teacher and an artist and a musician, and realizing that, you know, Natalie, my business partner, and I both felt that there wasn't a space or a community in the city that we lived where we felt like we could really show up and be our true selves, and also, you know, find elements of play and elements of like deep silence and deep learning. And there wasn't really a space that felt like it had both. We were able to find ourselves in a sense of play in some places and a sense of depth in others. But for us, and in my learning and from my experience, like finding the merging of those two things is really the practice of life. It's like, how do we stay tapped into a sense of curiosity, a sense of being, a sense of presence, and a sense of openness to learning, as we evolve, as we navigate, as we grow through different levels of stress, and different relationships, and all sorts of things like that. So essentially, we opened Elmnt Studio, which is a movement-based studio in terms of what we used to be offering in person. We're all sort of yoga, fitness, spin, meditation classes. But in our mission statement, you know, we talk about creative practices and allowing and encouraging or supporting people to embrace their inner creator or creative as well. And so in the physical studio,
which is in NDG, right?
Yeah, so our first studio is in NDG, and we opened that 4 years ago. And
can I pause you for 1 sec? Can you adjust your camera, because you're sort of out of it?
Yeah, there we go. Is that
That's
better?
Awesome. Okay, yeah.
I like took myself off because I don't like to like see myself in the thing.
I know.
Better.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. So yeah, Elmnt NDG was the first space that we opened 4 years ago on Monkland, and then 6 weeks before COVID hit, we opened a second location in Griffintown, which we invested a lot of finances in, energy into, and sort of expanded our offering even further from what we had been doing in terms of amount of space, quality of design. Part of the sort of essence of Elmnt is that we're very design oriented. We're very aesthetically oriented as much as we are. Sort of the inside work is also very important, but we like to, you know, we like the
beauty matters.
Yeah, beauty matters. Beauty helps. Design matters, and learning to design spaces and be in spaces that help us feel better is super important. Which we're learning now is like, wow, not, you know, creating these physical studios is really not maybe where we're at right now. Well, it isn't where we're at right now. So we've been learning a lot about pivoting our business and really coming back to, you know, what was our initial mission with this project to begin with, and how have we stayed true to that in our growth, and how have we sort of left that in some ways responding to a market, and how can we sort of reclaim agency over really showing up in the ways we want to show up by shifting the idea of access to what we have. So sorry,
I want to keep hearing what you're saying, but I really like what you just said about taking the opportunity to go right back to your mission, as opposed to feeling crushed. To say, well, it's almost like we have a chance to build a new space while we wait to figure out what will happen with the physical space. So that's really good advice.
Yeah, I mean, our business is built on community. Like, that's really what we strive to foster and support and create and nourish. And so in the onset of the pandemic, the first thing I was thinking about was like, how can we still serve our community in this super stressful time? Like what we teach are tools for the nervous system. What we teach are tools to help manage stress. So we're needed now, perhaps more than ever. And so how do we keep showing up in a way that feels easy to access, feels like a lot of our clients are of varying ages and have different relationships with technology and like or dislike. And so we had to really figure out, okay, where is our community online? And for those that aren't yet really interacting with us online, because so much of what we've built is in person. I mean, we have a beautiful Instagram, we have a nice following, but it's just a lot of our followers aren't actually necessarily people that come to our studio. They're people from other cities, they're people from other countries, they're, following us for different reasons. And so now we're trying to sort of weave our communities, both online and in real life, to maintain the essence of what we started with to begin with. And it's been really interesting and also beautiful to see that now, because we're online, there's certain people like yourself who don't live close enough to NDG and could, we're always saying, please open in the Plateau, please open in the Mile End so we can take your classes. And now suddenly, even my parents who live in BC are able to tune in and take my class. And it's such a beautiful thing to see and to feel how actually this is an opportunity to reach more people in a very meaningful way and to expand this idea of community beyond just an in real life setting.
Yeah, I think you had an advantage. You had a big disadvantage in that and I'm going to ask you about that on the, like, what impact this has had on you in terms of what do the next few months look like. But the fact that you have built a community and a brand and a sense of community so strongly across what you're doing on your own social media as well as that of Elmnt is a massive advantage. It's interesting, actually, as I say that, I realize that is the other version of the advantage that some companies have because they were already online. Some companies already had their selling systems set up, like all of their e-commerce already set up. So when this happened, there was a slight shift, but nothing major. The other version of that for a small business is to have a strong social media community already following so that they'll come with you when you do figure out your own e-commerce version. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. How has this impacted you and Natalie and Elmnt, like financially and just you don't have to go into great detail, but how has this exposed you now?
Well, we've always, in managing our numbers and in seeing, cash flow and budgets, we've always known, what are our highest costs, which are teachers and classes. And when you have a physical space, we were running between both studios 115 classes a week, which means we're paying a flat rate plus incentive. That's just how we have it set up for our teachers for every one of those classes. So you can imagine that the cost associated to the labor or to the physical presence of a teacher is quite high. So when classes sort of stopped happening in real life, a great amount of our costs also decreased. However, because we're also community oriented, our teachers are freelancers. They work, this is how they earn a living. So we didn't feel good about just saying, okay, classes are done. Me and Natalie are going to teach everything ourselves and slim it down. We actually figured, like, okay, how can we shift this so we can still pay our teachers if they want to be paid? And as more information came out with, thankfully we live in a country that they're offering such amazing support to everyone, most people. And so we've been having a very transparent dialogue with our teachers, and we're really open that way with our community, even our clients, saying, like, this is what it costs for us to run our operation right now. If you can help cover those costs, please do so. Otherwise, we have sliding scale that you can pay more, you can pay less. We don't turn anyone away for financial reasons. We're very clear in that communication, because really what we've realized through this online shift is that the numbers can actually expand. It's like I'm having in some of my classes 3, 4, 5 times as many participants as I would in the studio. And it's amazing that way that that it's expansive in that nature. And so we've tried to keep our sort of mindset on that expansive, abundant, multi-layered perspective, that in fact, by maybe not decreasing the cost of service, but being transparent in the cost of service and empowering our clients to really feel into where they're at right now and how they want to show up to support not only themselves in this way by practicing with us, but also the community that is upholding this system that lets them practice in this way, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And it really strikes me as you're speaking, because you're the third interview that I've done, and it's so interesting because you're actually, these are really smart business strategies, except that you don't sound like you're approaching it as just how can we succeed and profit and survive. You've actually approached it very much from like, it sounds like it's your values. And then all of a sudden they make sense for people who are actually looking, because we are still looking for community. We are still looking to belong. We are still looking to be connected to one another. So there's so many offers online right now. I mean, I'm doing probably the hardest thing. Yeah. Like the hardest thing for me I'm doing the 30-day experience, like with Elmnt, which I love. But the truth is I rarely do it at the time scheduled, because I'm working, and also, because also sometimes there are other classes, and I'm like, and then I'll come back to it. So how do you face the fact that there are so many competitive offers? What's your feel? And also in that question, what advice would you have given yourself? No, we'll just start with that one, and then I'll come back.
That's such a good question. I mean, it's undeniable. One of the main things we've seen through this period is like online workouts. And within the first few weeks of the confinement, the Google searches for online home workouts like 500% increased. So, I mean, obviously people want to be working out. They want to be moving their bodies. For us, we don't really, I mean, we see what other people are doing, but this is just the same thing how we operated when we were a physical studio, is that we're just focused on creating high quality content, empowering it with the other forms of practice that influence our movement practice, because what we do at Elmnt is, it is movement. That's what we teach, but there's so much more underneath that. And there's so much more within that we are striving to be a voice for in the online, global, local, whatever market there is that people find us. And so we've been really diving into that, again, our essence, and clarifying over and over again about, how do we create something like this 30-day program that is a continuation of a practice that helps people feel connected to community, not just, getting the hardest workout they can be with, some celebrity trainer or whatever, like a higher quality video. We want people to feel included in the journey and included in building it and in being a part of it, because that for us is the same thing. That's how we run our studios. Over time we bring in, better, I don't know what, body soap, or we bring in better equipment or new, there's little improvements that you see when you go to a physical space as well, that helps you feel a part of it and valued in that exchange, which is, I mean, we're here for the people. We're not running this business as a self-centered, let's make as much as we can and profit as much as we can. We've built our entire business on relationship, and we plan to continue doing that. So for us, it just keeps coming back to relationship and really connecting and listening to the feedback that we're getting, and truly being present to that, instead of just sort of pushing forward a brand or a vibe or whatever. Although, of course, in marketing, you have to maintain a certain amount of consistency. That's what we've learned. And that's how, and it feels like us, like I love what you said about these are smart business things, because, you know, Natalie and I, neither one of us are really business people. We haven't studied business. We have amazing mentors and people around us that we ask for help, but all of this is really coming through as an act of service and an act of creativity and an act of trust, you know, and experimenting. And thankfully, we were able to rent out our spin bikes, which sort of creates a baseline of cash flow to help cover our rent on both of our spaces and help sort of navigate some of the set costs. And because we had the privilege and the ability to do that, we've been able to think beyond just surviving into, okay, how can we actually use this grace period, is what I've been calling it, as a moment of reassessment and creativity to think, okay, we have an opportunity here. We could go as quick as we can into the online world, or we could slow down and just go step by step and feel through it the same way we built everything else.
I'm impressed. I'm so impressed by the lack of panic too. And the, like, you know, these are smart decisions. The bikes were a really smart decision. And again, not operating from a place of competition and scarcity, but actually just that endless question of how do we serve, and in a way that's respectful. So a few questions, just quick. One is, what advice would you have given yourself now 6 weeks ago that you didn't have at the time? Is there any advice you would have given yourself at the time that you
well, it's actually advice that Natalie gave me last week. She was able to go up north to a family property to sort of unplug and just like do her thing from there. And I was in the city. I don't really have access to another property or anything like that. So I was here, and I've been really on the ground, like doing a lot of the I don't know, the gritty work, you could say. And she was like, dude, unplug. Like, do you still check your email 5 times a day? I was like, yes. She's like, you don't need to. She's like, we have a team. Like, just, you don't have to check your email on the days that, you know, the inbox is covered by so-and-so. So for me, it's also like letting go of the old system and like trusting the slower pace of the new system in its emergence, and like really giving myself permission to sort of relax into it rather than try to stay ahead of it. That's the advice that I would give myself, is like,
it's such a big one. It's such a big one. I think not one of us can say that we haven't felt that sense of, oh, is there an opportunity here? I mean, you know, maybe I could put something out there, even from my nonprofit. We do something, you know, the goal is to do good things about bad news. So there is no better opportunity than COVID-19. And yet we've stayed silent because I'm tired. And because I recognized also that part of that reaction of doing something would have also been just to make myself feel like I wasn't invisible, and to make sure that people remembered we do something. And I want a better reason. And also I have I have people to take care of, and so I have to take care of myself. So I think there's, it's been very hard not to give in to that reflex of, you know, contribute, put content in. You know, there's so many free webinars of like, let us help you, but they're not necessarily, some are really great. There's so much beautiful content. There's so many people doing good work. And then some of it feels a little bit, you know, it's just stress content for the rest of us of, you know, what have you not done yet? So I agree with you of being, this word trust you keep saying, which is the trust of just, okay, you know what, you have to think in a business way. You don't want to lose what you've been building. And at the same time, you also have to calm down and accept that everyone's asking the same questions, which is the purpose of this series. We are all asking the same questions. Okay, so the two key questions that launched this series. One is, how do you think this pandemic will affect the fitness industry?
I think that the big thing that I'm learning is that people are going to take agency over their schedules again. Like the old system, classes were built at like, okay, before work, maybe at lunch, maybe right after work, or once your kids are in bed and you can sneak away to the studio. And I think that having things online is going to be such an empowering, incredible thing for everyone to start to build their own schedules and to fit, like you were saying, like I have work to do, I have other things. So to rush to the live class might not be the thing anymore. It's like, yes, there, of course, people will need to come together and be in physical proximity with each other at some point. And I think the value of those spaces, people are now maybe recognizing more than ever, is that, wow, like the studio I go to is beautiful and it has so much more there that I took for granted. And I shouldn't say and reclaiming our own schedules and reclaiming our own daily sort of workflow and learning how to fit fitness or wellness practices into your day in a way that really nourishes your rhythms, for me is like the most exciting thing. So I see that as being like a big bonus of the future of fitness. I think when we do come back together also, we're gonna, whether we go to a studio or a place that speaks about this or not, like the act of coming together in space is such a huge and healing and important thing that we don't really have anymore unless we are still part of a church or we're, a part of other forms of coming together in community. I look forward to that day when we can do that. But in the meantime, I'm also super excited about helping people learn how to do these things for themselves in their own homes and find sort of that ritual or that consistency within their own empowered choice, rather than it being a social thing or it being I think it's going to be interesting to see where it comes. And I also think it's going to be a lot healthier and more holistic. Like people aren't just going to be going to get their ass kicked every day in a fitness class because they believed a system that might be aggressive or unsustainable, and now we're seeing through to find more sustainable systems for self-care through fitness or movement or whatever it is.
I need to see more of you. There's so much that I would like to talk to you about.
We can do that anytime.
I'd love it. No, because I've shifted so much in the way that I work out. That I used to do all that strength, the interval training, and the killing yourself and working so hard, and the adrenal system going bonkers. And then understanding, oh, you know what? I'm going to shift to a different way, like the Pilates, the yoga, spinning, dance, a lot of dance, and just things that also, it's not the same approach. It's not the beating down. But what do you think then? I mean, you already were established in a form of fitness then that could be adapted. What do you think for the future of things like these much more traditional fitness spaces, like a room full of weights, or even in your spaces? What adaptations do you think this will require?
I don't know. I think it's a really good question. Personally, I think we already have the ability to make sure spaces are safe, like for us to come back and start using them again. But the part that comes in again is this trust, like who are the other people coming into the space? How is it being run? How is it being cleaned? All of those things. It's an interesting question. I feel like limiting class size will definitely be required, especially on like the new way in. So, I mean, I'm trying to think outside of my experience, because Elmnt is already a boutique space. Like our yoga classes are 16 people, like they're already quite small. So we are going to have to limit that as well. I'm not sure, I feel like the way the spaces are designed, the lockers are all side by side. They're all really in close proximity. I'm wondering, are people going to be wearing face masks to a spin class that are like cooling and have air vents? And should I be designing these, or like what's going on? And then I also think we're going to be able to not go back, but like return to a sense of normalcy just by seeing each other in the space and spacing things out a little bit more. I really don't know. To be honest, I really don't know. I think the businesses that are going to survive through this and beyond this are those that invest in an online offering that is of the quality or more of what they've been providing in person, and those who differentiate and focus on relationship, on community, and like really making it about connection, not just a sale. I don't know.
I agree. The second question, you might have already answered it, but it's, how do you hope this pandemic will change your industry? And perhaps...
Yeah, I think it's the same thing, like this agency over schedule, this agency over our time, which, you know, we've been conditioned by capitalistic society to sort of give over our time in exchange for a certain amount of money. And if we're not, then we have to hustle more. And I really think that we're being given this amazing opportunity to reassess and shift our workload and where we're putting our energy so that we can increase our reach, and also increase our well-being through that. For me and my teachers, I hope that we don't have to teach 16 classes a week. I hope that we can film a bank of videos that people can access at any time on their own terms for a certain amount of, you know, for a financial exchange, and that the teacher can teach a few in-class classes a week if they want to, and if not, they can have other forms of income, and have the time to do that, you know? So like everyone, I feel like we're all much more multi-talented than we've allowed ourselves to be, and we're all also capable of learning and growing and adapting. And so I'm excited to see where having a little bit more time to devote to areas of growth that may have been sort of pushed to the side in order to survive or in order to keep up with a certain amount of hustle, where people are going to open their awareness to a new possibility of how they can earn some money or how they can earn part of their living, and still remain connected to what their passions are. And so I think it's a really exciting time to see where this is going. And in talking with my teachers and hearing some of them thinking, oh, I think I might go back to school. I want to do this. I want to do that. It's just, for me, it's really exciting to see that people are sort of looking out a little bit from the tunnel that they've been in.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as you were speaking before about the way that, you know, people are going to want to know how a space has been cleaned or how many people or what's the policy of the place that they're coming into. I had a talk with Hilary McGowan from Grumman the other day, and it was the same thing. You know, as a consumer, we're now asking, I feel like the system has become personal. The economy and our political system and our elected officials and the rules of the spaces we enter were once left over to, it's the system. And we didn't really feel the interaction with it unless you were, you know, in a dire straits. And now the system, it's not economy, it's economy. Like it's much more personal. The person we elected is the guy that we're listening to every day, watching Legault, who, you know, I've disagreed with on certain things about immigration and inclusion, but the leadership that he's offered, just these are now personal choices. Now I understand the impact of my power and of the system's power over me. And in a smaller way, what you're talking about with, tell me, like, it'll matter to me, not just that you offer what you offer and that your space is a space that I love, but it'll matter to me too that you share with me, the client, how you clean it, how often, share the information that I used to just leave to you and not even want to know, because now the system is mine and it affects me directly. So, you know, same with restaurants. It's like we used to go because of the food, but also the atmosphere. And now it's food, atmosphere, and what's the layout? How do they behave? And how do they treat their people? It matters. Like now we've seen.
It's so much more transparent now. We can see through all the things that we might not have noticed or stopped to consider that we just
well, that's,
took
I
for
think, the
granted.
impact of this interconnectedness is that it's not just interconnectedness of, it's an interconnectedness, sure, but it's also, it's an interconnectedness that has shown us incredible. I mean, no one can pretend they didn't know about inequality now, and no one can pretend that they that these things don't matter to us now, because we've lost thoughtlessness. Anyway, I think my last question is, well, there's two things actually. One is, how can we as a community support small businesses like yours? That's one.
I think it is an amazing question to be asking ourselves, and for everyone it's going to be different. I think sitting with the question of, you know, what businesses do I want to be there for me after this is over? That's, you know, what I keep coming down to. It's like, oh, I'm going to order dinner tonight because I don't feel like cooking. I'm not going to call Domino's. I don't, you know, I'm going to call the pizza place down the street from my house that I can walk to. And, you know, it's things like that. So the best way to show up, I think, would to reach out. If you want to know, like, reach out to that specific business and say, hey, how are you guys doing? I miss you. Or what a wild time we're riding right now. How can I best support you? And, you know, for us, what we're telling people is, like, we have a PayPal. If you want to make a donation and you're able to financially, you can. If you want to buy classes on a sliding scale, you can. If you just want to share the word that we're doing what we're doing, you can. There's so many different ways you can show up and support. And everyone will have different audiences, different privilege, different resources, whether they're financial or otherwise, that you might be surprised what you have. Even if you're looking at your bank account and saying, I don't really have a lot to give financially, you might have something you can give, even if it's the ability to translate something, or, you know, design something for the next poster, or whatever it might be. They're like, equip yourselves and consider what resources you have, and reach out.
I love that. My last question is, what do you want to say to your community?
Ooh, I want to say thank you, first and foremost, for, you know, riding these waves with us, and thank you for speaking out and asking for what you need. It's in this way that we are really able to know if we're being of service and growing together. So thank you is the main thing I want to say.